Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. Happy holidays. Hope you're all having a wonderful December and enjoying the snow if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and getting lots of tasty flights if you're not. It seems like the season is well underway. A big season in Brazil and beer, and everybody's now seems to be transitioning down to Mexico and Colombia. I'll be down there for the Monarca in January, and then the Super Final in February in Colombia. So looking forward to getting back in the air. The hike and fly has been pretty good here in Sun Valley because we've had a very late start to the season, but starting to get some snow now. So transitioning to skis. But happy holidays. Just a reminder, we've got a lot of cool stuff. I guess it's a little too late to make it for Christmas now, but they've been importing a ton of XC Tracer Varios, the Max and the Mini, over the last couple of years now. Actually been flying out the door. So if you need anything in that department, go to the website cloudbasedmayhem.com and check out the shop. I'm also now the importer for Netsu heated gloves. They've got a thin version and a thick version, and those have also been flying out the door. So much of that is back ordered, but I got another big shipment coming. Should arrive early January. So if you need anything, also tons of Patagonia stuff and Cloud-Based Mayhem merch and all that kind of thing. If you need any presents, go over to the shop on the website and get whatever you need, including the book, Advanced Paragliding. For this holiday special, we continue our Legend series with Butch Peachy. He's been a San Diego pilot flying hang gliders out there for over 40 years. He believes he might be the first person ever to vol-biv with his hang glider. And this is just a series of fantastic stories that kind of encompass most of his life. He's been really passionate about flying since the beginning in the 70s, and he talks about some of the crazy accidents he's had, and he's luckily been able to walk away from, and how to kind of deal with fear in flying. He also instructs now, so he's got a lot of valuable insights in that department. Talks about how you have to change how you fly as you age and get less resilient. The importance of having a partner who supports what you do in the sky, and just some fun adventures over the years. I've been really enjoying doing these, and I don't know if you all know this, but maybe 90% of the podcasts we do here on the Mayhem, or the guests on the podcast, come from listeners, from you all, just suggesting people. I've got, I think, 8 or 9 in the can right now. I've been doing a lot of these lately, as I've had plenty of time the last couple months. So I've got a whole bunch that'll carry us through the winter, but keep feeding me your favorites. If you want to hear somebody on the show, let me know and I'll reach out and get them on. No guarantees, but I certainly try. So enjoy this chat with Butch. Fantastic character and pilot, and a lot of history there. And again, happy holidays. Thanks for your support. I really appreciate it. We couldn't do it without you, and thanks for listening. Cheers. Butch Peachy, you've definitely got the best name that I've had on the show so far. We'll have to talk about that, but welcome to the show, and thank you for your time. And tell me about how you got into all this craziness. We were just recording before we were recording, and we're doing the second time here, but 51 years ago, right? 1973?
Yeah, I had a roommate come home, and he says, "Hey, Peachy," that's what he called me. "What'd you do this weekend?" I said, "Oh, I worked. I bagged groceries with my first job out of the service." And I said, "Well, I work, Frank. What do you do?" He says, "I went hang gliding. If you try hang gliding, you'll burn your skis." Because I skied 30 days the first year I started. I just go all in for everything. And I said, "What's this hang gliding?" He says, "Well, this guy, they have this kite thing, and they hook it to the kite to run down a hill, and you land at the bottom." I go, "That sounds like fun." And so I went over. I met a guy at San Diego State, and he would take people up to about 50 miles north, and there was a school called Escape Country. and they held some of the first meets out there in the 70s. And I ended up there, but I didn't connect up with the right school. It was kind of a fly-by-night school. And the guy kind of like set us all in a little circle with a chalkboard and showed us a glider. This is angle of attack. This is angle of attack. And they said, any questions? And we're going like, I don't know. Okay, everybody got to run with a glider on flat ground. Any questions? No. Okay. Let's go to the hill. And so they'd have a guy hold the back of the glider, and you'd run down the hill, and they go, push out, pull in. And of course, everybody was like stalling immediately. And I was the third one up there. And I go like, okay, because I had one aviation class, I knew I need airspeed. And so I started running down the hill, and they yelled, push out. And I pushed out, but then I pulled in, and I was clipping daisies as I'm going down the training hill. And they're yelling, push out, push out. And I climbed 40 feet into the air. And I almost overshot the whole training hill down, and then it went down to another 200 feet. And anyway, I was the first one to fly in the class, and everyone, I looked back up after I landed, everybody just jumping up and down. We had a great day. Finally, the regular school came over, but the fly-by-night school, that's how I started. That was my only lesson I ever had in hang gliding.
Really?
And I knew everything about it, so we went and rented gliders and showed my friends how to fly. And of course, we crashed in ravines and broke gliders and hurt ourselves. That's how the hang gliding started.
I love it that your instructors go, okay, well, now you know everything I know. And you've basically been taught nothing.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was easy. Lean right, lean left. And there was somebody at work that also hang glided. And that's all you thought about. Anytime it was like being if you ever had a bad breakup with a relationship, every time you don't have any feedback, you think about that relationship. Except that was, you're thinking about flying the hang glider. That's what.
And so you're in your early 20s then? You're just out of the military?
I was 73. I'm 25, 27 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was older. I was way older than everybody.
You wrote me in an email that you got into competitions. You wanted to be really good, but you didn't have the talent nor the intellect. I laughed about that a lot, but you just were saying you were maybe the first pilot ever to, what'd you call it? It wasn't called vol-biv, obviously, back then, but camp fly.
They called it camp flying. What happened was I was flying the second cross-country meet ever. Well, I flew the first one in 78, and I flew 79. And we were flying flat surface, single surface gliders. The battens were flat. They would have deflexors or something like that. You can look that all up. But they were about a 6-to-1 glider back then. And
like a speed wing now.
What's that?
Like a speed wing now. A paragliding speed
wing. Yeah. And but what the hell? The big air at Owens, you can fly anything. Right. Even like a jacket with battens in it would fly. But anyway, they called the day because it was too windy. And this guy, George Worthington, I was looking at you. We've flown in, stronger air than this. He said, "We'll just fly off anyway." So we took off, and you couldn't make it to an LZ. You had to land back up in a ravine if you didn't get out. That's the way this place was then. We didn't have the glide to get out, but we took off, and then I ended up grabbing a thermal, climbing out, and then flying down the valley. I said, "It's a windy day. I could really go far." And they called for 50 knots at 18,000 feet. Ooh. And I go like, well, I'll just stay under 50 knots. I'll just stay under 18,000 feet. And then I got it to about 10 grand, about 20 miles, 30 miles away. And I said, I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to go deep into the mountains. And all of a sudden I got blasted up. And then it was past a place called White Mountain, called Palisade Flats. And I was being sucked up in this thermal, and I was at 13 grand to 14 grand, and I'm backing up, and the glider's backing up, and I got the bar fully stuffed. I mean, I have pulled in all the way, and the glider's still backing up, and I'm trying to get off, and then I end up just getting blown over the back of the mountain into some rotor, and then came down in the shadow of the rotor, and the glider's going left, right, and somehow I flared and got the thing on the ground, grabbed the nose of the glider and held it down. Anyway, I found out when I was holding my little hall wind indicator it was pegged at 55 miles an hour on the ground. So
Jeez.
that 50 knots wasn't at 18,000. It was more like at 12,000.
Oh my God. You're
So
flying in
yeah,
wave.
so I was about a mile behind the edge of the mountain there. So I walked around and I had a cocoon harness. I'm freezing up there because it's like 40 degrees at that altitude, like just around 13 grand walking through the mountains. And I find some place, and my driver comes in, Butch, I saw you. You disappeared. Where'd you go? And I said, I'm okay. I said, what do? I will go get George, and we're on CB radios. And it was a big box like this. You put 9 batteries in. I got an antenna. And I'll call him, call him about an hour. So I ended up, it's all shale. Nothing up there except shale. So anyway, I tell him, I said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to fly off when the winds die down. They didn't fly. But I found some rocks piled up that Bass sheep herders used. And I found some fence posts. And I used my landing form to get a fire going. And that's how I kept warm. Because I had a little thermometer. It would drop down. It dropped down to 32 degrees. And that's like, can you live inside your refrigerator for how long? But I remember I just kept rotating on my, laying on my harness, and freeze my butt off, but then kept rotating. Then the next morning, it dropped down to 15 miles an hour. I said, okay. I walked down, it was about a mile of glider, and I got it over to the edge and took off into this ravine. I said, if you ever did a good cliff launch, now's the time. And off I went, and I remember making one pass. The Vario went, nee, and I go, thanks for letting me go. And I glided for maybe 20 minutes to a place called Benton Stations and landed. And I landed there, and it's like 7:30 in the morning. And my girlfriend at the time, she goes, Butch, you out there? And she drove all the way down from Mammoth, where we were staying. And she showed up within 5 minutes. And I was able to fly the comp that next day, though I smelled like smoke. That was I was the first guy to ever camp glide. This guy George wrote about, which I guess paragliders do this all the time now.
Yeah, I mean we made a film about it back in 2012, I guess, and we were kind of guessing there was maybe 50 people in the world, vol-biving, and now it's a regular thing. I mean, everybody's doing it. The advent of light gear and everything, it's just made it so much more possible and fun.
I saw something. This guy was going through, hitting him and his friend were hitting all these different mountains in through Nevada, and I got, wow, what a great adventure they were doing. I can't remember his name, but
Hansa and Logan.
Yeah, those guys are just, they're doing stuff that like we never even dreamed of.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting because you can just stuff it in anywhere, spend the night, keep going.
Yeah, and it got a little tent and all that.
But you were the first. You led the way, man. You were the first. Not planned, of course, but you were the first.
Yeah, I found a little stream. The moon came out, and a big lenticular set up in the middle of the night, and the moon came up. It was beautiful.
Did you have any food?
This guy's wife I stayed with, she says, you got to take food. And she gave me a granola bar, and I had my granola bar in my harness.
Right. So you had something, a little bit.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was quite the adventure.
But that was 79. So what?
79.
We jumped a bunch there. What did flying look like for you between 73 and 79?
The guy I knew at work who had a glider, we would go out with him to a little place where we walk up the hill and everybody just do slope flying. I mean, it was like 100-foot cliff and you run off and practice. He knew more about hang gliding than I did. And then a friend of mine, I got him involved in it, and we went and rented, what did we do? Oh, we ended up buying a used glider, and we shared it. One would drive, one would fly, and you'd get 2-3 minutes of airtime, like going Elsinore and landing. And then we bought a second glider that had been crashed at Torrey, and he was a handy guy. He built a frame for this sail, and so now we had 2 gliders, and then we each got to fly. And he actually made his own harness. I found one used, and that's how we got started. But I didn't fly with the community because I was a working guy. I wasn't one of these, comp pilots or or that worked for a factory. I was this guy that had a job. And so I would go to this place called Cowles Mountain. It was about 800 feet to walk up. And I'd get out of school at San Diego State, go over to where I worked, walk my glider up this mountain called Cowles Mountain, fly off, land behind work, pack the glider up, and go to work by 1 o'clock. And so I get flights in. I'd fly 2-3 minutes. And then I remember one time, if you could do a 360, that was a big deal because they didn't teach. We didn't learn how to do that. I remember the first time I did a 360 off Palomar, they said just fly it around a turn. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And the only thing I knew was just go over like, well, what we were doing was slip turns. And I mean, I didn't even make it to the LZ. You lose 1,000 feet per turn. So I remember one time my mom came out to see me fly off Cowles Mountain. And I did 1 360 at the hill and 3 360s over her head. And my girlfriend says, that's the best I've ever seen you fly 4 360s in a flight.
That is awesome.
That's the early
So this
years.
is before, you weren't thermaling. You're still, everybody's taking sled rides at this point.
Yeah. I didn't, up until I went to Silmar, we were flying Regalo standards. And that's where I saw them thermaling Regalo standards. And I did thermal at Cowles when it was blowing 20 miles an hour. And I flew Tory, which was scary to me. But anyway, I wasn't I was kind of like flying on my own. I just always flying. I did it for 2 years. Then I linked up with some people that every Thursday they went out. So I changed my days off. And that's when I started accelerating in my flying.
But has this ever been a job for you, or was flying ever full time, or has flying always been a pastime?
No, I've always had a job. So I've been, just kind of a privateer guy who, it's like most people, they would make a vacation so they'd go fly a comp. And I was working through my way. I became a supermarket manager. And so I flew on Sunday. That was my day off. And the Go Guiders got better and better. And because of an influence guy named George Worthington, he did all the first FAI records, out return, distance, rigid wing. He was the guy I flew with. But we would go fly competitions where we were doing pylon racing and we'd get our ass beat. But we were decent at cross country flying. So we would go out every weekend and we would have a task. It was a $5 bet, and we had all these different sets of tasks we have, and whoever flew the best would got the $5. And I constantly paid that guy $5 all the time. But it made me become a better soaring pilot because here I'm getting low and oh damn, I said, I'm not paying George another $5. I would work any little bit of lift, even 100 down, just to stay in the air longer. So that it was good to have a guy like that who would, he would challenge you. It wasn't just like fly around and drill holes in the air. We were
make every time you fly a challenge, make it a task.
Yeah, and that's the way it is for me today. If I get up, I'm going cross country, driver or no driver.
What is this? I was told that you always fly with a harmonica, and you never have retrieve in mind. You worry about your retrieve wherever you land. Is that because you pull out your harmonica and people are interested in picking you up, or how's that work?
It's gotten me dinner lots of times. I was flying a comp in Japan one time, and they had us flying the 60-mile task over tiger country. Trees and everything. The Japanese, I see why they came up with kamikaze. They were just like doing crazy stuff. And so I was flying along, and I got over one ridge, the next ridge, and finally they said bring 2 gliders because you're going to have to land one in the trees, and then you can fly the next day, and they'll have the crew take the glider out of the trees. So I'm like, wow. And so I came into this and said, oh, it looks like I'm going to go in the trees, and I'm following down this road, which is about the width of my wingspan, like, okay, which tree am I going to land in? And then finally I popped over and there was a village down below. I land in this village. So I come in under a 20-foot power line and land in a dry rice bed. And here is a school. Anyway, I'm breaking down the glider, and here comes the kids out, and they're all in their little uniforms and everything like that. And they come over and they look. And I don't speak any Japanese, and so I break the glider down, and I hand them a piece of paper. I had two of them. One said, and it was in Japanese. If you find this person, call this number, and this is before cell phone, and then they will come and get them. And so I'm sitting there, and I pull out my harmonica, and I start doing "Oh Susanna," and I'm playing the song, and they start singing in Japanese, except for the part where it goes "Oh Susanna." That's how they sing it, and then they go right back to Japanese. And I was cracking up. So I show this one kid his piece of paper, and he takes it and runs away. And so then all of a sudden, then he comes back, and it looks like his sister and his mom and the sister are going, "You come, you come," and they take me over to the house, and they sit me down, and here's the whole family, grandparents, parents, and kids having dinner, and they set me at the tail of the table. They feed me, and I don't know what it was, but it was good. And so then the grandfather gets up and goes over to this cabinet and pulls out this little vessel of something, and he pours me a little drink of it, and they're all going, "Oh, no, 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 no," and like, what? And so he pours, and he stands up and goes, "Kung Pai." And I go up and I stand up, yeah, Kung Pai. And I drink it. And it was like turpentine smelling like gas.
Oh, God.
And my eyes are watering. And of course, the grandpa is going like, ha, ha, ha.
Loving it. Loving
this
it.
guy Jing to drink my homemade juice or whatever. And right. I knew that was like, oh, I got to save face here. And I just go, "Can I have more?" And he just roared. And of course, they're all going, "Yay!"
That's awesome.
But I played
the Japanese moonshine
initially too, before dinner. But
are you trained in that? Are you a trained musician, or are you just something you picked up along the way?
It's just something I carry with me. I used to be. I used to work out in New York. I was a music major in college for a couple of years, but then I went to New York and started working, and then I toured through Europe and United States. I'm a mallet percussionist. I don't know if it's timpani or marimba it is, but you play drums too. So
yeah.
But just picking up any instrument, I carry one with me because some people are on their phone. I'm on my harmonica.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you play it in the air?
No, but there's a guy who actually did. He used to carry his glider through the Alps and would do all this cross country like you guys do on this X cross stuff. And he would carry his hang glider, and he had this thing like a Sherpa, the thing around your head when you're carrying a load. That's how I carried a glider. And I remember him taking photos, and these were with old cameras, and he would play his harmonica in the air.
I love it. That's awesome. But you traveled in New York and Europe for music and stuff, but you've stuck with California your whole life. You've been out there in Del Mar area, and San Diego area.
Well, I got drafted in '69 because I was out there working, and I was doing tours in Europe and picking up contracts and stuff as a musician. And then I got drafted, and then they ended up putting me in the Marine Corps because they were putting 10% into the Marine Corps because they were eating them up in Vietnam. And they gave me an audition, and I had good chops then. But then they came down to I could either shoot mortars in Vietnam or play in a band at Quantico, Virginia. What would you pick?
Yeah, I'll take the band. Thank you.
Well, there's an advantage. If you went to Vietnam, you'd go in for you'd teach you shoot mortars, which seemed kind of fun, but then you'd come back and there'd be 6 months left of a 2-year draftee commitment. And they just let you out early. So you're only in the service for 18 months.
Ah, okay.
But so anybody I knew who went to Vietnam, it was enlisted, they all came back a little tweaked.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I missed it because I was never a tough guy.
Hard on your mental health. Yeah, right.
We're not even talking about flying.
Yeah, no, we're not. But that's okay. That's good. So I love hearing stories about the early days. What's the craziest thing you saw in the 70s? And you feel free to think about that for a while. We can edit out some sounds.
It goes on and on and on. It's just like anybody who flies. It's just when you're dealing with nature, it does all kinds of things. You go to Owens and everything's magnified. So
yes,
You know,
I just some of the carnage stories from back then. It blows me away that you guys were all, we really
yeah,
stand on the shoulders of giants. It was
I,
amazing what
yeah,
you guys were willing to huck yourself off.
yeah. I,
Like you talk about with camping and 50 knots of wind. That's sailplane wind. That's
yeah,
not hang glider wind.
yeah. I end up at one time I was I was working and I thought, well, what the hell? I'm going to take some time off, and I bought a new hang glider, which was a Wills wing at the time, and I flew. I said I'll go fly a comp. Well, I won the comp, and it was the
Ooh.
Southern Cal Regionals, which was that. This is the hotbed of all the good pilots. The world champion was there, the national champion was there, and I beat them all. But and
Oh.
I had to kind of back down flying. I was only flying just like weekends. But I said, so my ego was huge then, and and then I said, well, I'm gonna fly internationally. I'm just gonna see if I can eke along. And and some of my friends go like, what are you doing for work now, Butch? I said, well, I'm just a hang gliding bum with a mortgage and lots of roommates. But I went and flew the pre worlds in Australia, and then I found out, nah, you're not very good. You're good in your own backyard. That's where I found like I thought I was better than most. I was just barely mediocre compared to the international crowd. Though, I mean,
Ah,
you want to learn to fly. You want to learn to fly and be competitive. Go to Europe. Those guys
yeah.
are hot, and so the Brazilians
Yes,
and
indeed.
a few other people like that.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
that's why I fly
So with that,
competitions is because you. I remember read something when you're the guys there. Yeah, I flew competition to learn more because
yeah,
you learn more in one competition than a whole year of flying.
we say that a lot. I
Yeah.
think it's,
And of
I
course, you
think for
see
the
all
most part
kinds
to
of
be
crazy
true.
things happen.
Yeah. Any of those crazy things come to mind?
Well, there was one time I was flying across. I I was flying. I was giving cross country clinics. I took off on a horse, and I'm climbing in with a cloud cover, but there was a thunderstorm behind us. I'm climbing up only 100 feet a minute, and I get to 10 grand. And as I'm circling, all of a sudden I hear, and as I'm completing my turn, I watch a U.S. Air go right by me, and he misses me by a wingspan. And it
Ooh.
was Revan, and you could see people looking out of the out of the plane,
Oh my God.
and the people on the ground go, Butch, did you see there's a plane that just went right by you? Yeah, yeah. So I said, class is off. I'm just going to go land at Julian. It's like 15 miles away. I like landing at Julian because you can land it close to town and go get pie. And so I'm flying over there. I go over to Laguna, and the air is glass smooth. And I look at the clouds, but there's these things called marmotas. You know what a marmota is?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a precursor
Totally.
to a tornado, and I've never seen it in California. I've seen it in comps I've flown in New Mexico or Colorado. I mean, we were used to flying in hailstorms back there. Um, but anyway, it was the person who said, "Okay, I was climbing over the Laguna. It's like glass moves, and all of a sudden the glider immediately dumps upside down." And I had just put my hands in these mitts to keep me warm, and I'm hanging by my fingertips, upside down, trying to hold onto this glider, keep the control bar, and I fall into the frame and break the frame. Well, hang gliders, like a lot of things, will right themselves, no problem. But when it right themselves and things broken, then it just goes bam, 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 it broke up. And I had a all carbon glider then, and it went into a spin. And first it would do a high G spin and then sometimes a regular spin. And I, of course, I threw my chute, but the chute, it didn't redeploy. I looked down and okay, I got to redeploy it. And then it comes up and wraps up in the wreckage. And so I'm going down in a high G being pulled by my arm like a rag doll. And then sometimes it would settle to a normal spin. And I found out that if I held a piece of the parachute open, it would stay in a stable spin. And then I remember going from blurry blue to blurry brown. And then I hit on a rock outcropping in a ravine. And I remember seeing pieces of the glider falling into the ravine. And I said, well, I'm probably done. because you usually hit on your chest like that. And I've known guys that they hit on their chest and then all of a sudden they pull their aorta out and, they pass out to their life for a little bit. But I was still okay. What hurt? Well, my arm was lacerated from the parachute, and I got out of there. But then it's like all kinds of brushes around me, and I finally get up, and then later on, here's a helicopter right here, Sheriff's helicopter, and I tell him, I'm okay, don't need anything, goodbye, because I'm thinking money, money, money. They're going to try to, And then he said, he says, well, ask me to climb the ridge, and he'll drop off his partner and give me a ride over. I said, okay. He said, yeah, I just told Lifelight to head back, and there were like 3 agencies there. Somebody saw this hang glider go down. And that was the adventure. But there was a good thing out of it. I ended up getting a sponsorship for a new parachute. I got a sponsorship for a swivel, and I got a sponsorship from an air deployment company. And I end up when I go out and do all these cross country clinics, I used to go around the country. I ended up with 8 sponsors, and that helped pay for my hang gliding.
So the takeaway is wreck more often.
Yeah, and that's without Facebook and internet.
That's amazing. Is that your only accident? Have you had others?
There's been crazy. I mean, I've been flipped side down 4 times, and when you lose control bar, it's bad. But I got turned upside down at Blossom, and right in front of Susan was flying right next to me, and I got turned upside down right above, and I was going parachute, and then I go like, oh, I still got the control bar, and so and the glider was like almost like that, almost didn't fully tumble, but I remember stuffing.
His hand is basically straight down, and
yeah, well,
more than
almost
vertical.
past. And then I remember it said parachute, but I still got the control bar. So I remember stuffing the bar and then flaring it, pushing out, and then doing a hard turn. And she said I missed the top of the hill by 10 feet. And then I was seeing just like stars because I pulled so many G's. And then I ended up going, but anytime I get in trouble like that, I always fly back to where I just got in big trouble and go, nah. Like, you didn't get me this time.
That's kind of how you deal with the fear injury.
Yeah. And then I went and landed, and they said they could hear me scream from the LZ down in the valley. And I don't remember screaming, except, that was about it. But
I mean, screaming from kind of excitement, like, yeah, I got it, I did it. Or screaming from holy shit, I almost died.
When stuff like that goes by, you're just kind of like, huh. And anytime I've been tumbled 4 times, and it messes up your turbulence tolerance, because every time that glider seems going to pick up or do something to you, you think, oh, where again, and it just kills it. And I've seen that happen for many pilots in competitions. They get flipped upside down, and it takes them out off their edge. Where if they're doing aerobatics and they brush their glider, no problem. But when the nature does it, it really messes their mind up. And I don't know how these paragliders, I mean, these are brave people. Their wings collapsing all the time, and they're going cross country and handling all that. How do you handle it?
Well, you know what? I think wings have gotten better too. They don't, if you're flying them well, they don't collapse very much anymore. I mean, you're going to get little tip collapses, but it just doesn't happen nearly as much as when I was learning. So either I've gotten better or the wings have changed. When you're flying 2-liner, more high aspect wings, you really can't let them go. It's not good to let them go.
Yeah.
They can bite pretty hard. So it's, you get better at keeping them open.
Yeah. I've heard that from lots of paragliding pilots, because I tried it in 89. I was out at Fish flying the world meet. We had a blown out day, and somebody had a paraglider, and we played with it in the field, and I flew it off the next morning off the top. I think I did a reverse, fly out, and then go out down land, and then went up for the competition later on that
so month. You've never transitioned over. You've stuck with HG all the way through.
I was too busy having too much fun on my hang glider. And then I tried it again at Marshall. Guy let me try his paraglider. I said, I tried this. I said, you pull it right, you pull it left, that's all. There's nothing to it. It's easy. And there's a lot of early hang glider pilots in the 90s they got into it, and they're like, and then, but they don't, a lot of really good ones smacked in because they're doing that
Yeah.
downwind base leg thing, and all of a sudden the glider goes, and they're doing it close to the ground. And so
Mm.
it just never got, and I thought, well, I'll just stick with a frame. That's why we call
You
it a
you
frame.
I like the frame. You said in your email that you had a hiatus from I can't remember the
Oh,
years.
when I
What was that
competed,
all
yeah,
about?
when I was in the on and off. I was on the world team about 7 years, and uh, it was like late '80s. 86 through 94 is when I competed a lot, and that's when I did my best. Though the people I flew against were 10, 15, sometimes 20 years younger than me.
Hmm.
You know, I would just like the old guy flying, like I am today.
when you so there wasn't really a hiatus. That was
That's when I did my best in
oh okay.
competition
Oh
wise.
okay. Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
I'm with
I'd
you.
fly several meets, and I'd win one or two a year, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
I always said, I always use phrase like as being a musician. Like when I went to New York, I thought I was good. No, I was mediocre compared to people with talent. I learned
Yeah.
that, you know, I'm better than most, but not good as some.
Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
that's and those better than most were usually in Europe or Australia or Brazil. You know, and if you could, I mean, like once in Australia, I won the day, and then then it went downhill for the rest of the meet. Most people like crawling your way up. I was just descending down.
Butch, when you had that incident where you landed in the ravine, your glider's all broken up, you threw your reserve, but it didn't sound like it really properly deployed. It sounded like you hit pretty hard. Uh, was it hard to come back from that? Were you pretty shaky after that, or were you able to get right back on the horse?
You know, as I said, that when for a while there, when you fly, every time the glider wants to, like the back end wants to lift up, you think, "Oh my god!" and it just
Yeah.
kills your flying. One thing was I took one day to get the glider pieces up to a top of the ridge with some friends. Then the second day I went in and got the glider out. The next day I thought I was breaking out in Poison Oak, so I went to the
Mm.
doctor with Susan, and then they give me a blood test, and then they come back and says, "Oh, you don't have poison oak, you have shingles." And I said, "Shingles? How do you get shingles?" They said, "Well, you know, a lot of stress or a life-threatening situation." And Susan and I are just laughing. And it's funny how you internalize something like that, that, you know, you don't think it affects you, but it does.
Mm. So
So
you weren't even
I know that
aware of it,
answers
but
your
you'd had,
question, but that's when
yeah,
it's funny how we do this.
you internalized all that stress and fear and it came out in
Yeah.
shingles, which is I've heard is no fun.
Yeah. So that's the only stressful situation I can. I mean, there's been a lot of situations I've been in that, you know, you come out of, and you know, but it's like cutting margins. How close, you know, if you keep cutting margin, cutting margin, the new margin becomes a new normal. But the new normal, I mean, that margin is so thin it doesn't. That's what happens to all these wingsuit people. You know, they do all these videos where they
Get
take
closer and
six
closer and
takes to
closer.
get that one shot, but they're cutting the margin. Then all of a sudden, one little hiccup, and you know, so I back a lot
Yeah.
of that stuff down nowadays.
How old are you now?
77.
77. And you fly most days, you were saying.
I fly whenever I can. Um, and I mean, I'm retired. I got a 15-year younger wife, and keep telling Susan, go to work. You got to pay for my toys, and that's basically what I, you know, and that
Does Susan fly? You've mentioned her a few times
she
now.
flew
This is
until
your
she was
wife.
about 57, and she quit when she says, you know, I don't fly enough to be safe. Yeah, your
Oh,
best
okay.
insurance is flying, and we got stuff to be done, but then all of a sudden I get lured away. Hey, it's time to go flying. You know, somebody says, hey, we're going to go flying. I'm out of here, and she goes, well, what'd you get? How was your day? Did you get any chores done? And I said, no, but I went flying. She says, well, you do need to fly. I mean, so
That's cool.
yeah.
You got to have a supportive spouse. You mentioned instructing. Are you still instructing?
No, I mean, God, stuff. I mean, I would have up to six. Then I used to have like six people, and we'd have a class, we'd sit down, and then I would take six people cross country, and I would get them though from San Diego to Palm Springs. But even with intermediate gliders, I mean, you can get them 25 miles. I mean, I had a guy who'd been flying like 9 months, and first day I worked on just teaching him how to thermal better, and the second day we got him 25 miles. So that's what
Not bad.
I did. That's what I did well then. But I don't instruct now. I mean, basically, you know, I drove for a bunch of paraglider pilots a year ago, October, and I know I've been flying Owens. I knew all my Owens like the back of my hand. Not as good as a local, but they were doing this, and I said, but those guys had a lot of the stuff already figured out. So I mean,
Hmm.
I can't give much advice to much pilots because they got it all figured out. They're I'm in a car with Butch, rambling stories here that comes. That it reminds me of all these different situations. Well, back in the day,
Have you, did you have any mentors back then in your own flying that you've stayed in touch with over the years?
well, the guy George Worthington I mentioned, who
Yeah.
actually established the FAI records and stuff like that. He was a mentor, but then he got taken out when he was trying to put together a meet where they did ultralights, and his dream, because he was a sailplane pilot, and he wanted to have an ultralight that could take off from the ground, which there is now. It's called a Swift with an electric motor,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Mm-hmm.
can do your self launching. That was his dream, but he was running this contest, and then the wing broke off his ultralight, and I lost him in 1983, and he was only
Yeah.
63.
Huh.
That was the main, but that's why I went to comps because there were just so many good pilots, and I couldn't believe. I mean, U.S. pilots, they weren't that helpful. I go to Europe, and then there was the world champion. I'm flying this meet. I said, hey, what do you think about our task? I walk up and says, well, Butch, I'm going to probably do this, and maybe we can do that. They tell me what they're going to do. They would,
Mm.
and
They're open
that
boats.
was good stuff. And then I don't know if comps do this anymore, but I used to impress anybody who wins the day has to debrief the whole crowd at the end the next day and say, how'd you do it? What'd you do? Because we all want to learn. And, I
Mm.
got lucky. So,
Did you ever go through a real kind of distance chasing phase? With
no,
Larry Tudor and those guys, was that ever a thing?
I never got like, I need to fly distance. I just want to do the best of the day. I mean, in
Mm.
'87, we flew this meet off a place called Ord, and they used to call competitions where you said, okay, it's an unreachable goal. You fly along as far as long this line as you can go, and that's how, because they didn't have real normal scoring stuff. They didn't have you just landed as far as you could go. That's what they were pushing on in '87. And oh, it was '87, '86, '87. Anyway, so they called Independence. It's like, I don't know, 150, 160 miles away. And so we take off, we break airspace, we go over George Air Force Base, we break that airspace. Then we go through Edwards Air Force Base, we break that space. We go through uh, China Lake, we break that airspace. And then we hit we get into Owens Valley, and we're flying up toward Lone Pine, and a lot of us landed at Opine. But this guy named Larry Tudor almost made Independence, which is just crazy. And he wanted to meet, he was doing like great stuff like that too. But
Yeah. The
yeah,
Dark Prince.
yeah, I could. He usually beat me most of the meets, but I bested everybody at least once. You know,
That's awesome. Awesome. What?
you do enough mileage, you're going to get lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You're going to have your day, isn't it?
Yeah.
What, this might be hard to articulate, but what has kept you so wrapped with flying all these years, 51 years of flying? What's the thing that keeps you going out to the hill?
Well, I hear it from other people, but you're totally alive when you're flying. Um, when I used to have some higher stress jobs, the one day I went flying, I didn't think about anything else, and
Mm.
it was a respite. And uh, I mean, I asked people, the most people I ever talked to was 60 people in one of these clinics, and that was in Golden, Colorado. And I always start my talk out. How many of you had flying dreams before you got into flying? Everybody raised their hand except maybe one person out of the 60. How about you? Did you ever have flying dreams before you got into flying?
Oh yeah, definitely. I
That's
always
what we
wanted to
live
fly.
for. And
Yeah.
I can remember the flying dreams I had when I was 7 years old. The day I tried a hang glider, I go, this is it. And I had tried a sailplane. I had tried flying an airplane. And I didn't try a helicopter until later in life. And I go, this is it. This is my flying dream. This is as close as I've
Mm.
got. And that was before we could go cross country. So you're playing with the forces of nature that get you into the air, and then you can go over the horizon. And I mean, that's wondrous. It's that we live this time of this time, this presence, that we can carry something with us either on our back or on our car, and it transports us. We're sailing. We're three-dimensional sailors. That's what we are.
Mm.
That's wonderful, don't you think?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, man.
I'm curious. Your partner,
Susan?
Is it Sandy? Your wife? What was her name?
Susan. Yeah.
Susan. Susan. When she, I'm sure she thought about it the same way. When she stopped flying, what was that like for her? What was that like watching her go through that?
Well, you can take the girl out of flying, but you can't take the flying out of the girl.
Yeah.
Since then, she's flown sailplanes. She went and flown a motorized trike, and even thermal did. And she'll go out with me when I.
Oh, so she's still flying. She's just not flying.
But she just doesn't.
Okay.
She says, I don't fly enough to. She's an excellent lander, but she's not. She's flying. Her glider was just way too big for her. She was always having problems to take off with it. And she said, there's a lot of things I still want to do, and I'm getting older. And if I get hurt, I can't do them. So right now, until I get time, because she retired from teaching last year, but now she's working for a private school. So, she just loves to fly. I mean, I met her on the training hill. I mean, at Horse Canyon, and I don't remember meeting her. She said she came and talked to me, but I remember running into her in Mexico City. I mean, not Mexico City, but in Mexico, they were flying out, flying in, and then like the fourth time I met her, that's when we had a conversation. And she was a person that's just like mind, except she's way smarter than I am.
I have people that reach out from time to time who've been in the sport as you have, for a long time. And it's something I start thinking about as well. I'm 52. You do start thinking about longevity in the sport, but also durability, endurance. The hard landings are easier to take when you're 20. We can walk away from stuff easier when we're more resilient, I guess. Have you changed how you fly because of your age? Does that alter your approach?
Yeah. What's happened is I still fly a topless. I can fly it well. I can take it off, but landings are really hard because with topless, you're screaming in. Yeah. And I had to go through this transition of trying to, I'm still having problems landing. It's like 50% of my landings are ta-da, but a lot of them are like, you auger in. And as you get older, you can't handle the speed. You don't react as fast. And I mean, you got some wind, sure, you'll get away with it. But I've had to really kind of back off. I had this range I could have 180 degrees of skill task. Now I'm down to like a 30-degree range. I don't take 45-degree and more takeoffs, crosswinds. I always keep. So I've reeled everything back so I can still keep doing it. Then I also bought a single service glider so I can fly more. And it's something that's slow as a paraglider, flies as slow as a paraglider. So I'm kind of, well, maybe I can get a glider that I can fly with these guys, but I still don't have the sink rate, but I'm flying with the same glide ratio. And in a way it sucks because I'm used to flying it between 10 to 1 to 15 to 1. I mean, my glider, my topless glider at 48 miles an hour, it'll get a 10 to 1. And, and then but when I'm flying the single surface, I'm flying at 30 miles an hour and it's saying 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 3 to 1. I talked to this guy named Rob. He does all our weather. I go, God, this sucks flying at this speed. He says, well, now you know what we deal with. But he still goes far. Except he's sitting on a couch, going down with his feet out in front of it. I'm prone out. So
Yeah.
I've reeled things back. That's what I have to do. But
Okay.
I have to fly because that'll keep me safer.
Yeah, currency is important, isn't it?
Yeah. So and then
when was the last comp
I
you
still
did?
do push-ups. That's the only thing I do, and then just do some walks. I had to quit running because I had a back. I used to carry my glider up Blossom, and that's an 82-pound glider.
Oh,
yeah. Then I ended up buying.
Jeez.
Yeah. Then I bought an Xterra, which you can take it. It'll get it up Blossom. It's like, I don't know how far that is, but the paragliders walk it all the time. But I was carrying the glider up.
Yeah. What was the last comp you did?
Kind of like some one-day comps. I flew one in Silmar. I didn't do too well, but I had won 3 comps there before. When Susan bought me a new glider, a 2011 glider one time, and I had to have airtime. So friends were coming down. It was a little one-day comp running back and forth, doing pylons. And I said, okay, I'll go. I'll just go fly it just to get some airtime. And went out there, and they said, hey, well, you don't have the right kind of variable. It doesn't ping these cylinders. I go, oh, okay, I'll just fly the meet anyway. Don't worry about it. They said, oh, we'll give you a variable that does it. Well, I won the meet. In fact, I was the only one to complete the task. And I hadn't flown up there for like 10, 15 years. And nobody knew who, I knew that I used to fly there much or anything like that. But I remember doing the last turn point, and I said, Susan, I'm coming in about 5 miles out. And she goes, are you still in the air? You won. Everybody landed. I said, okay. But and then they looked at my track, and I was way down in ravines and stuff like that. But I was having fun. It was the stuff I used to do anyway. And they were used to racing. It was super marginal conditions, and I'm really good at scratching for a hang glider pilot. Not compared to a paraglider pilot, but for a hang glider pilot.
Where do you think you got that skill from? Was that from those
paying
early
that
days of
$5
Worthington?
to George Worthington when I was about ready to go down. Yeah, you did.
We've learned over the decades that the British are really good at especially when comps are really light, because they take off these tiny hills and they got to survive in really light conditions. It's the opposite of the Owens, and but man, that's a good skill when you can just survive.
Oh yeah, I was sponsored by a British a British company on a hang glider, and I hung out with the British team. And I said, how do you guys do this? Well, we have the English way of flying. I go, well, what's that? If it's 100 up, turn. If you got 0 up, turn. If you got 100 down, think about it. You might need a turn because 100 down is not. At least you got something pushing you up a little.
It's something.
And I always remember that. I mean, they're just good scratchers.
Yeah, they hang with it. They're very, very patient, and that can be
and they're flying in dreary conditions a lot of times.
That's it.
Yeah, and they're weaving into all these. I mean, the Brits are Nazis about all these these air spaces they can't go into. They can't do that. Can't do this. I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of basket weaving.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think they get good at flying slow, which is an important skill sometimes. Butch, if you could rewind the clock, I get this question. I didn't ask this for years. I used to ask this all the time, but lately I've been bringing it back because we just had Chuck Smith on the show, and I wanted to ask him this one, and I'll ask it with you. If you could rewind the clock to your 50-year self, so somewhere in those 73, 74, 75, I guess it would have taken quite a while to get 50 hours when you're taking 2-3 minute sled rides back then all the time. But if you could rewind to that version of yourself and, come down out of the sky and say, "Hey, Butch, I got some advice for you," what would you say?
You mean advice for myself?
Yeah. Knowing everything you know now, so your 77-year-old self gets to go back to your, whatever it was, 26, 27, 28-year-old self and say, "Hey, I got some advice for you." What would you say?
Oh, it's like anything. Just do what you love, and don't 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 let life get in your way. Go do the things you love to do. You just, I mean, we get drawn into. There's so many paths to go on in life. I mean, you got family and friends and relationships and stuff like that. I mean, I that's a track I took when I ran into Susan. Then I found somebody who was in tune with the way I thought, and she flew. If she didn't fly, I wouldn't have married her anyway. I was 43 when I married. I wasn't going to get married, so I followed that. I mean, and we never had kids because we're all with the same tune. We're too self-centered, selfish, and non-nurturing, even though she teaches school. So we were just like, we want to go play. And if you're that kind of person, I meet them all the time. That's what the paraglider guys, they're always going down to Colombia. They're doing this. They're flying in the Italian Alps. What do they call it? What's
Dolomites.
That one place? It's a great place. I want to go there, but it's just my advice, and then I just continue is just do the things you love. And now I mean, and you get married, yeah, you sure you end up being part of it, but marry somebody or get with somebody who loves what you love. I mean, we're all hot when we're young, but have somebody that has a lot of things in common. And I mean, I remember one time I was out at Torrey Pines, and this guy was talking to Sue, says, "Oh, Butch is so lucky that you married him." She goes, "Well, why is that?" "Well, he can talk about a flight and your eyes don't glaze over." So find somebody that their eyes don't glaze over when you talk to them about what you love.
Oh man, you're not making me feel very good about my relationship. I took her for a tandem, and about 2 minutes into it, she's looking back on, "Okay, so what are we doing on Friday?" Yeah, you're not that into this, are you?
Oh no,
yeah,
no,
I'm not that into this.
I broke a girlfriend's arm on the training hill. Like, I love this so much. Everybody should do it. No, I even got my mother to fly a hang glider. I put her on a training hill. She ran down the hill, launched the thing, landed, flared, stopped the glider. And I'm running down after. I said, "How was it?" She goes, "That was great." I said, "You want to do it again?" "No." And she was 57 years old. She was not an athletic person.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Gravitate toward the people who love what you love. That's a definition of happiness instead of a tug of war.
Yeah. Tug of wars are not fun.
And I've trained so many drivers. I would get a girlfriend and I would just groom her. I would train her on how to. We'd start on easy roads to drive and to retrieve, and then we'd end up. I just work her way up, and then they end up. A couple of them end up really good Owens Valley drivers. That was the test. That was the ultimate place to. They were using CB radios and later on 2 meters. But I would groom girlfriends to drive. I even taught them how to drive.
I bet you ripped through a few girlfriends doing that, though.
What's that?
I bet a lot of them didn't make it too far.
Yeah. I even stopped. I even kind of backed down.
Driving isn't for everybody.
Yeah, I backed down hang like this for a while, a couple of years. I'd only fly a little bit, and I said, well, maybe I'm going through too many relationships. And I was doing all the ground things, playing tennis, taking dance lessons, doing stuff with her friends and all that stuff. It was okay. I mean, I'm a social guy. I'm a really gabby guy, but then she goes, this isn't working. Nah, nah, nah. I said, great. And I went and bought a glider and flew a cop.
Love it. Love it. Butch, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for your time. I'd love to keep chatting here, but I've got to roll. But I really appreciate sitting down with you and look forward to flying with you. I'm hoping to get out there in late February, earlier March, and love to fly with you in your home site. You can show me around.
Yep. Whatever you do, you may not be right, but do it with enthusiasm.
I love it. Perfect place to end. Enthusiasm. Love it. Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Appreciate talking to you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Cheers, man. If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So, for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account, and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.